What is up, guys? Lord Nick here, bringing you another League of Legends related video. This video is going to be the episode number 17 of the Dangerous Game podcast. Now, in this podcast, I want to specifically talk about patch 9.24. I will be excluding Aphelios. Note, I wanted to really talk about him, but I think I'm going to make a separate video specifically trying to go into detail about him. There's a lot of complexity with the champion. I will mention that I initially thought I would be much more disappointed with it. Upon looking at him, I thought, that the complexity of the champion was nullified because a lot of people were explaining it. His Q really just seemed to go off of whatever gun you had active, but each one has a separate ability that then procs based off of, it does something different depending on what your sidearm is. So there is a lot of complexity to the champion, and I feel like there just needs to be a different video if I want to go into it about him. There's just too much. But for my overall opinions on him, I think he's a solid champion. I think he's going to fit into a similar pool as Jhin. I think he's really powerful right now, but I don't think that he's going to be extremely overpowered because he suffers from a similar setback that Senna has, which is immobility, and him to the larger degree than her. She at least has an E that allows her to kind of get away. With him, he has no potential to really get away. If somebody gets on top of him, you have Graviton to try to reset it, and I mean, you do a decent chunking of damage, but if they CC you at all without a QSS, you're going to probably die. So he is a very he's going to be very challenging for a lot of low elo people, and I would recommend that most people under the diamond threshold should not touch him in the solo queue matchup. He is not specifically difficult in his base forms, but learning the nuances and complexities that allow for the outplay potential on the character are extremely difficult, and I think require a lot more game knowledge than you would really imagine they would. So my recommendation is just to avoid him in ranked if you are below the diamond threshold until you've either played close to 100 games in normals with him, or until you've reached a understanding of the game that would allow you to use all these different combos that he has to their fullest. Note, I do want to talk about the Diana changes. I want to talk about the nerf to Conqueror and what that means for a lot of ranged individuals who are abusing Conqueror, and what that might mean for the tanks in the meta. And once we get into that, guys, those are going to be some of the big things. And then some of the big things I also want to talk about is what you need to know to climb this season. It seems like this is going to be a completely different style of season, and I want to talk about what are some of the big changes that Riot did that you've already felt, and what that means that you need to learn more of. So starting off, guys, I want to talk about Diana. So Diana has just gone through a massive rework. Now, it doesn't seem all that massive because really all you did was change her E and her R, move her R to her E so she has her dashes more readily available for her, and then made her her ultimate into what her E was, pull people in, and if you manage to pull people in, you then get this giant beam that does extra damage. That's really the only difference between it and the old ability. So, what is the big deal about what they did to her is now that she is a more viable assassin in the early game. That mobility that a lot of assassins have that we all hate, she now has it. Now, the difference is that the rest of her base kit just doesn't do nearly as much damage as it did before, because she's not relying on it 100% as much as she used to. Post 6, she is looking to go in, use that ultimate, and do tons of damage. I think her and Orianna are going to be an interesting pair, maybe a Diana jungle, Orianna mid, because you can do a pull in with the Orianna followed by a Diana pull and just nuke everybody. So there's a lot of cool things that I think this new thing does for her. I think that her viability is going to be much better in the mid lane. I'd say avoid her in the jungle. After watching a bit of her jungle, her clear in the jungle is mediocre to fair. So maybe avoid her in the jungle for the time being, because you need to have a lot more confidence with her. So if you are to try to make her in the jungle, take her in the norms. Kind of the same thing that I said about Aphelios. She is kind of a new champion. Kind of relearn how she works, because she does play slightly differently now that you don't have your E consistently as a CC to keep them on top of you. But you definitely have the gap closer so that your other abilities are a lot more useful in the laning phase, and your ability to roam is a lot higher. I think that really kind of covers what we need to talk about her, but I do also recommend that people that don't understand what these changes did to her on a more base level go either look it up or start banning her, because she will start having a spike in play rate, and I think that she's going to also increase in her ability to carry games. Thus, I think she's going to become a bit more dangerous coming up. especially now that AP assassins are more prevalent in the mid lane meta opposed to the AD assassins due to some lethality changes that happened to this patch. Note, that does not mean that lethality is dead. Anybody that uses Sanguine Blade is still going to be really powerful in the mid and in the top. Zed, on the other hand, is going to be seeing himself kind of decline a bit. ProGuides did a release of a video just a few days ago from the patch, and they kind of explained it pretty well in there. There were some nerfs done to Serrated Dirk, nerfs done to lethality in general, and thus, early game pressure of a lot of these AD assassins is going to go down quite a bit in comparison. So I would say just be cautious of that, and kind of just look out for Diana now. Something that you don't have to sweat nearly as much about now is going to be Akali. Now that doesn't mean she's not going to be some terrifying presence in the lane. It just means that she's not going to be able to clear the wave as much. They've nerfed her Q damage, which means that she can't clear the backline minions nearly as fast. Which is really good. That means she can't roam as much. She can't put as much pressure across the map. And if she does try to roam to get these squishies down in bot lane or in the mid lane, you can punish her a lot more because she's not going to be able to set up that wave and manage it nearly as easily. On top of that, she does do a little less damage in the lane, and her ultimate doesn't execute nearly as much. So all in all, this is some solid nerfs that I think are going to peel back the Akali playing a little bit, so those who have been fearing her a lot more don't really need to fear her nearly as much. Conqueror changes have also made her a bit weaker, along with quite a few other champions, but note that it does still have that 6-second duration, which is plenty of time for many of these all-in champions to keep them up. It does mean that she needs to come out of her shadow a little bit more frequently than before, but it's still not enough that it should change that much about her. The rest of her nerfs are more of the efficient parts about why she's going to be less productive in the laning phase. Note, these are some pretty big changes overall. I feel like this is going to help shift the meta back towards a tank-oriented meta. Conqueror in general has been nerfed enough that tanks are back in the meta. I think Fiora is definitely going to be standing up against them pretty heavily here soon, if not already. A lot of people are already kind of predicting her back in towards the S tier area. But I feel like a lot of people have kind of forgotten what the whole purpose of Fiora was in the past. So once people are starting to relearn her, I think she's going to be a person that people in the top need to fear, and people across the map need to start fearing, because her tower pressure that she has is ridiculous. Note, this is very odd that she's going to be coming up here and doing all this amazing work, because you had somebody like Trundle who used to do the same thing. The problem is that Trundle feels a little bit outdated. There's a lot less that he can offer to your team now, and unfortunately, as much as I love Trundle, I don't know if I see him really coming back into the meta anytime soon. Especially with quite a few nerfs across the board to things that are all would have helped him climb back into the meta. He is just not really in a healthy spot, and I think Riot needs to kind of really reevaluate his kit, or reevaluate some of the numbers on his kit to hopefully try to figure out a new way for him to fit in. Now, if we were going to look across at a few more things that I did want to talk about, which were going to be the Ryze changes, which really aren't that many. They nerfed a little bit about Ryze himself, but the Conqueror changes really did hurt him a lot. He no longer has that ungodly sustain. Note, he is now an A tier champion, I think, more closely to an A tier than an S tier or an S+. Does not mean he should not be feared. It just means that he needs to be in a little bit more capable hands, people that play Ryze a little bit more. So those who are using him to just grind out free wins, I'd say be a little bit more cautious of it. Now, keep doing that with Cassiopeia, because she's still in just a very good spot, and even with the nerf to the Conqueror, I don't think the healing nerf is really going to be that huge on her, seeing as she has a lot of innate healing in her kit already, she kind of relied on, plus the Conqueror ones. Really, just the buff of the damage the Conqueror gives her is going to be really huge to making Cassiopeia still very strong. I think you need to be very concerned with her, but on top of that, take that with a grain of salt. There could be a few more things that happen that, during this patch as it goes on that might make her drop to a couple tiers down. I've played against her a couple times and found that Maokai is very, very good into her right now. Even though she has miasma that stops you from jumping in on people, you have a lot of things that make it very difficult for her to deal with you and your team. You have a lot of zoning pressure with your ultimate, and so while the miasma is up, you just have an ultimate to prevent her from being able to try to follow or chase or do any repositioning that would be beneficial for her. There's a lot of champions that can do things like that to her. So I think that right now she might start falling off soon if the tanks are to actually come back in, like everybody's trying to predict they will. But I think that's going to be the last bit that I really want to talk about this patch. Conqueror specifically did get that nerf where range champions now only get 60% of the healing bonuses from it, and it only lasts 6 seconds for everybody. So that is a pretty hefty nerf across the board for everyone. But it just means that if you want to keep the Conqueror at 10 stacks, you have to stay in the fight. Like, there's no running away, coming back as easily as there was before, so really you just have to be a little bit more aggressive to use this rune, which is, I think, is a very good choice. I wouldn't be surprised to see if they knock it down to 4 seconds opposed to 6, because 6 is still kind of long for it to be there. If people still feel like it's very oppressive and very too powerful still, then we might see it go down to a 4 second duration, in which at that point I think the rune will be about on par with some of the other less used runes, but not quite as bad as like Omni Stone per se. Um, Next up, guys, solo queue improvements is the category I really want to talk about. And this one is personal improvements everybody can seek for in solo queue, and this is that big. What you need to know is also kind of attached to this. The biggest thing is understanding how the game has reshaped. I'm saying reshaped because it is a different meta and a different game than you probably realize that it is. Yes, dragons are very important. Rift Herald has now been made a little bit more important, but not super important still. So it's still a bot-dominated meta. This is a jungle bot synergy meta. That is a big part of how this game is going to work and function properly. So I think right now some of the biggest roles you can take are gonna, if you cannot understand how the jungle changes affect jungle pathing, then support and ADC would be the two best roles for you to try to prioritize getting. Support probably more than ADC, because in many previous patches and current patch, it's much easier to get the support role than the ADC role, but it's also very easy to affect the game from the support role, be it a roaming support like Pyke or Blitzcrank. You can also go into something more of a lane dominant bully such as the Nautilus or Leona. There are quite a few picks you can make that will still affect the game post laning phase that are still very, very strong in the laning phase and are very, very safe. The meta is shaping up so it is more bot focused because of the dragons, and thus also vision control is a huge, huge thing that you need to start focusing on. Wave management is still very important because you need to be able to minimize pressure or focus on freezing waves in positions that are beneficial for you to take fights or get jungle assistance. Now, the lane that is generally pushing up in the bot lane will generally take dominance and win in that area. Now, it doesn't mean that you will automatically do so. It also relies on how well your jungle understands prioritizing map dominance. If they are focusing primarily on the top lane, then that leaves you very vulnerable if you are pushing forward. So just understanding, watching where your jungle's pathing will help you a lot. This meta is very volatile. You lose lane, you lose game. That is the same way for top, for mid, and for bot in almost every case. Pretty much every time I see a lane that goes 0-3, means the team who got that 3-0 is most likely going to win it unless that player starts inting their ass off and losing all of their advantage. There's the few exceptions I've seen to it, but it is an exception. It is not the common state that those teams that get that early lead lose. Because once you start gaining pressure somewhere on the map, that allows you to open up your team to focusing on the one objective that matters: dragons. Getting to 4 dragons is pretty much a game ender. Getting to 4 dragons in an elder is a death sentence. Like, it is so hard to throw that type of lead now. Jungle experience is changed very drastically, and thus a single death in the jungle can also lead to you end up being a 2 to 3 level lead, 2 to 3 level behind your opponent. If your opponent can kill you and steal 2, maybe 3 of your camps, if they clear an entire side of your jungle, you are doomed to catching up to them. You are going to be in a massive disadvantage for a while. Doesn't mean it's impossible for you to catch up. In many games, I found myself catching up or being caught up to by the people that I've set behind in level. In gold, though, you are going to be so deprived. There's so much punishment now in the current meta of things. And then how the dragons change how the jungle works now a bit because, Infernal opens up paths for aggressive junglers to keep making plays in the enemy jungle and being able to have escape routes more readily available for them. Likewise, mountains make it a little bit more safer for some of those more mountains and ocean make it a little safer for those trying to be a little bit more passive, and then ocean's a bit more of a neutral one overall, or wind is more of a neutral one overall. So understanding how those things sculpt the map, how those things affect the map, how those things affect playstyles is going to be a big, big thing that everybody needs to learn, not just junglers, because it affects everyone. The jungle was a role that was meant for you to put one player to put an effect on the game that is a little bit more enigmatic. Now it is much more forceful, and what I mean by that is enigmatic is somebody who is unpredictable. You never know what they're going to cause to do. Now you know what they're going for. They are much more predictable in the fact that you know what they are planning to do. They are planning to kill you and get that dragon, so they have to either kill the bot lane or force your bot lane back or kill your jungler. Mid laners are priorities too, but you get a bigger advantage if you can force two people out or force the person with the smite out. So those are going to be the three focuses on somebody who's ahead to kill one of those three people on your team. So if you're looking at that, what are the two biggest roles you need to be wary of? Who are the people you need to make sure don't fall behind? Oddly enough, it's not the AD carry. ADCs are still very good in the late game. The people you need to make sure don't fall behind are the supports and the junglers. A jungle falls behind, and you're going to be behind on smite, and you're not going to be able to contest those objectives. If your support falls behind, you're going to fall behind in the vision control area, because they can't roam by themselves. And if they have to roam with a little bit lower level jungle, you're much easier to pick off, get killed, and start letting the opposing team snowball. So the two most important roles in the game now are jungle and support. Jungle has been that way for a while. Support is now amping up. You really have to be very cautious now. So there's a lot of heed you have to pay to who's getting ahead, when, where, and what is happening. So I would recommend everybody start kind of looking into how the pros are starting to try to play the game. They are still trying to solve the meta too. But note, in low elos, playing safe has always been kind of the name of the game. Now it is definitely the case. In the bot side of the map and in the jungle, you need to play safe. Giving up priority, giving up pressure is going to cause a lot of problems. Even if that means you have to leave your top lane to go 0-7, you have to focus on the bot lane. Now, hopefully your top lane is not going to go 0-7, though they may, and that might be problematic for you. But it's going to be more problematic if they're going 0-3, you go up there, get killed with them, give up the pressure towards the dragon, and their jungler goes and solos the dragon. There's a lot to be gained from fighting for that objective. There's a lot to be gained from fighting on that side of the map. So if prioritizing vision control on the bot side of the map, prioritizing just understanding jungle paths is a huge thing too. Now note, if you're trying to learn a new role, this is one of the best and worst times to do so. It is a completely new meta, so everybody and their mother is trying to learn how this meta is. And if that's the case, you really need to start hitting the books and start trying to crack it. I've cracked what I believe to be the jungle pathing essential here, and I might do a jungle pathing video in the future if people want me to do so. Note, I believe that the path that I choose is a very greedy path, but it is also probably the most optimal path for those trying to do something to prepare themselves from the early part of the game. Not trying to effectively do a lot with ganking per se, because there are jungles who are very good at ganking, but there's a lot of jungles who are very good at clearing the jungle, gaining a gold advantage, gaining XP advantage, gaining a vision advantage by simply avoiding those early ganks until they can get their jungle item completed, in which they become very, very powerful. So that's what I can go into that more in depth in another video. If you guys are interested, please leave a comment down below. I'll do so. And I would be more than happy to talking about some of the weird picks that I found out about it. But I did just kind of want to give everybody kind of this heads up that the meta, you've noticed the meta is shifting, but because you've noticed it is the first step to understanding that awareness will bring you better overall game knowledge here in the future. Doesn't mean you have to become more aggressive because you understand it. Even if you understand how the jungle's evolved and you understand what you need to do, and now that you know, oh, we need to make sure we stay alive, we need to force pressure, but we need to not, give up our lives to keep this pressure up, yada yada yada. Just because you have the knowledge doesn't mean that it automatically makes you ahead of your opponent. It now means that because you have it, you have to apply it in the proper manner. And applying it right now means more vision control coming from the bot side of the map, so that includes ADCs, and potentially mids, more control and assistance given to your jungle. Note, a support's job now is helping your lane. If you can't pressure for kills in your lane, roam up to help your jungler if he gets into a fight in the river or in their jungle or in the enemy jungle. Be more aware of the map. Focus in on other things than just trying to force fights in your lane, because if you force a fight in your lane and you lose, that's two people that are down. That gives up a lot more pressure. If you're focusing on what's going on the map and you can rotate to a position where you now have the man advantage somewhere else, it's less likely they're going to be able to force in on your ADC. The way the lane is shaped now, as long as your ADC plays safe, it's actually kind of hard to go in on them and fight them in a 1v2 situation without having to, exhaust a ton of resources of their own to do so, potentially going 1-1 in the process. So just being more aware is going to be the key to allowing you to apply new knowledge that you are gaining about how this meta is shaping up. I know I didn't really go over much in concrete detail this video, guys. I am sorry about that, but I do hope that some of this actually helps you a little bit in understanding what you should do towards the new meta, what you should look out for towards the new meta, what are things that have happened now that aren't really as impressive in this current meta. Things that were OP last patch may not be OP this patch, such as Ryze and Cassiopeia. But, we still have a bit more to go to really kind of determine how OP they're each going to be. So just kind of keep your eyes out for everything that was OP and the things that may be OP in the future. Become more aware of what's going on throughout the map each game, and improve your vision. Guys, vision score is the biggest thing that you need to improve on to get better, and right now it means it more than ever. I mean that more than ever. The biggest thing that I think wins me and my team's games is the fact that I buy close to 7 to 9 red wards a game now, and I'm putting them everywhere, and then I sweep, and I'm constantly clearing enemy vision. Keeping them in the dark keeping yourself in the light is what's going to allow you to win games. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I appreciate every single one of you. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you wanted to let me know something, or you want to tell me about things that you want me to do in the future, go ahead and leave a comment down below. If you have friends, please share this with them. If you want to follow me on other platforms, I am going to be on Twitch more often, hopefully, maybe. And potentially, follow me on Facebook, I guess. I don't really use it that much, but feel free to do so. But thank you again, guys. I care about each and every one of you, appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. So everybody, have yourself a wonderful, wonderful day.